Awesome. Okay, we're recording and I'm going to hand it over to Vernal and to Sandi.
Okay, welcome everyone. I am so happy that Sandi and I were able to talk about this. I'm about 27 years out from my own breast cancer, and I got involved with the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program. I got involved with them 25 years ago. But I recognized that the only way that I could really get involved with that process of really reviewing grants was that I needed to be educated. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the reason I felt so strongly about it was because I said, as cancer survivors, there's a sense of urgency. We want to find a cure. We want to make sure that the best research is being offered. And we bring definitely a unique perspective to research priorities, because sometimes what is important to scientists may not make a difference to the patient. And so when I got involved with the DoD, I wanted to make sure that they were funding things that were important to us as cancer patients. And it was kind of empowering. It put me in a different position from the scientists, that I had a say in what was going to be done. So one of the things I recognized was that I had to get trained. So I did that first, and I did it through the National Breast Cancer Coalition Project Lead, which really was an intensive course over 5 days, and it was like going to med school. So we were studying biology, chemistry, epidemiology, and we had some of the best physicians and researchers and scientists teaching the course to all of us. So I took that first, and I was diagnosed in 1995, and I took the course in 1997. And I reviewed for them for about 7 years, and now I am on the ad hoc committee for the programmatic review, which makes the final decisions after they've been reviewed by the peer reviewers. Another really good educational program is through the Research Advocacy Network. They put on educational seminars throughout the year. Usually it's at ASCO, and they have a really good program for educating cancer, and that's for all cancers. Project Lead is only for breast cancer. And then there's the Scientist Mentor Program at the AACR. And another program that was really good for us was to try to start a journal club within your own community and bring your own institutions in and invite them to come and bring a paper to your group or to your advocacy organization. And really you break down that particular research paper. And that's a way to continue your education also. I just thought that it gives you a certain validation with the scientists and the scientific community when you have that kind of knowledge. The types, when I first came to DoD, there weren't all of these particular cancers being funded. And I think breast cancer was kind of the catalyst for all of the other cancers to be able to get this funding. And it really happened because the breast cancer ladies were just kind of doggedly, they were going to make sure that they increased the funding. And that first year in 1992, they got $300 million for the Department of Defense Breast Cancer funding. Now they've been level for the last several years at $150 million. And and it's not about funding. They want to make sure. I think this program is unique for DoD because they want to fund things that that can't get funded at the NCI or NIH. And so they're looking for innovative and create much more out of the box type thinking as far as those kinds of things. And the Army has always done research because they have military they have to take care of. And one of the things I have to say about the military, I met with them a few years ago at a regenerative medicine meeting, and they are able to get their military, once they have someone who's injured on the field, out there in the field, they can get to them within 30 minutes, triage them, and within an hour, they are transporting them to a major hospital ship or to a major facility where they can be treated. They couldn't do this during Vietnam. They didn't do it back during World War II. They were treated right there. And a lot of times there weren't any survivors. Now, I would say probably 90% of the people that are injured in the field survive. And they're learning how to do things a lot better, and to triage. And a lot of that has come through the research that they do within the military. So these are the programs: breast, prostate, kidney, lung, melanoma, ovarian, pancreatic cancer, and some other rare cancers. And I would advise you to go to their website and look at all the work that they've done over this last several years. I know for breast cancer, it's over $3 billion that they've invested in breast cancer research, and they have funded some really good. And I remembered when I first went in, I was very, very nervous. And actually, the scientists really didn't want us there. They actually didn't want us there. But now they really respect the advocates because we bring such a unique perspective. And one of the things I recognized is that they really wanted to hear from me. This last programmatic review, I'm sitting there with a top oncology doctor, and he said, "I really don't know whether I want to, if this should be funded or not." I said, "Larry," and he's a well-known oncology doctor up at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I said, "Larry," I said, "we have to fund this." I said, "This is good. This is really good." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Vernal, I'll go along with it." He said, "I just wanted to hear your perspective." So I had to explain it to him, I said, "This could really make a difference, and it's for metastatic breast cancer." So, and I felt real strongly about it. So they do want to hear from us, and they recognize that we bring a unique perspective. So I'm going to let Sandi take over from here, and then I'll be piping in from here on.
All right. So one of the things that it's not on here, but Vernal kind of reminded me of when she was talking, is that this is a place where you can find some great mentors. So you're on a grant review panel. You have all these wonderful doctors, oncologists, researchers that are there. You're basically getting the same review that they are. Your vote counts just like theirs. Your number counts. It's like a 1 through 10. If you do a 5, everybody else does a 9. You explain why you did a 5. And it's really interesting that afterwards, like Vernal said, they come to you and they say, "Well, that was interesting. I didn't think of it as, from that angle, but thanks for letting us know that." And you get,
Sandi,
yes.
just really quickly, I just want to do a check with people. And are you familiar with like when Sandi said a 5 versus a 9? She's talking about there's areas where you have to rate something. Is everybody familiar with that? And if not, I know Sandi can explain it.
Probably, I think all those that have gone to DOD have read them. I'm sure they know. Okay, so you get to rate and review just like the regular doctors do. So you are a part of a group, and you see then those other folks when you go to AACR, or when you go to ASCO, or when you come to SABCS, or when you go to one of the lung conferences, or the colon conference, or the GI conference. So it's interesting that you meet these people, and after a while, they're like these big people because they've grown the same time you are. And instead of calling them Dr. So-and-so, when you're just talking, you call them by their first name and they call you by your first name. So you become friends with these groups. And it's like, oh yeah, and it's really funny, like with Eric Weiner, one time at, I guess it was ASCO, because I was a mentor and we were going around the posters explaining what the poster was and how to read it, that, Eric came by and said, hey, how you doing? I said, oh, I'm fine, Eric, how are you? Goes, oh, I'm great. He goes on, and the girl said, oh my God, that's Eric Weiner. So doing these grants really gives you a step up so that, you know these people, they know you. If they need something, they may call you, they may email you because they have your email and they pretty much have your phone number too, and you have theirs. So it gives you another perspective on how a patient advocate can be involved and can really be a part of the science, which I think is very cool. So a patient advocate was born of the need to provide support, education for patients to stimulate the research and better understand the disease and treatment. Patient advocates present perspectives that other people don't. So, they're involved in national guidelines, statewide guidelines, local guidelines, and scientific research. And according to the NCI definition, a research advocate brings a non-scientific viewpoint to research process and communicates a collective patient perspective. So what are the different type of research grants that you may be asked to read? One is prospective, which is probably what the majority of the ones at DoD are. And it is a study that looks for the outcomes, such as the development of the disease. These are normally done for new drugs, new treatments, etc. If your grant is looking at a new drug, be sure and check for the safety protocols for the patients because you want to have those there. The next is retrospective, which looks at grants. Well, it pulls information that is already in different areas to look at certain things like maybe chemo brain. Did everybody have chemo brain? Was it maybe a patient population? So I know one time there was a research grant in Washington on the agriculture workers up there because they were all getting the same type of cancer. So it can be like a research grant for retrospective for that, for looking at that. Okay, other types of grant you might read are a screening grant, QOL, supportive care, palliative care, or public health grants, such as tobacco cessation and looking at disparities. So what to look for in a grant? This is what I look for, and I'm kind of picky on some of the things, is what type of grant is it? What's the name of the PI and the others on the grant? And then I go and I research them. I look at the organization they're in, what university or company, and the others on the grant. Because while the PI's name may be there, it's usually not the PI that's actually doing the actual work on the grant. It's the interns, it's the research assistants, it's other people. So see what they've done in the past, and is this something that they normally do? Read both the lay and the scientific abstracts. Oh, I guess, sorry, typo. The scientific abstract will help you understand the grant much better because these give you a background and just a snapshot of what the grant is that they're looking for. I keep a dictionary handy to look up words and meanings that I don't know. I made a dictionary for myself, but NCI has a great glossary, along with other organizations have really good glossaries too. So if I find a word or something I don't know, I'll look it up. If I can't find it, I'll call one of my mentors or email one of them and say, and this is what I actually did on one of them for a grant in California. What can you tell me about epigenetic? This was a long time ago, you understand. So it's, what can you tell me about epigenetics? You know, I have a grant, it's talking about epigenetics. I really don't understand it. And they explain it to you. So, and then I write it down so that I have it in my dictionary so that I can look over the budget of the grant. To me, that's really important to see where the money is going and who's getting paid the most money.
Another source for really getting things, and I've used it before, is that I actually I Google things, and like, you know, if it's macrophages or looking at certain pathways, I will Google those things just to see exactly, so I can get a pretty good idea of what that really means in cancer. So I've done that in the past, or you can go to PubMed and get information also.
So see if the grant has partners so they're not working in a silo. So whether it's other universities or other departments within the university or company. So we're not looking for grants that are just done by a biologist or a chemist. We're looking for grants that a biologist and chemist and other people are working on together, so that you can see the whole area and the whole aspect of it rather than just from one particular area. Because while the biologist may see one thing and say whatever, the chemist might come over and say, well, you know, that's really good, but when you add this and this and this, it doesn't come out that way. So, you know, why don't we see what we can work on? So working together like that as a team makes a big difference in the grant. Watch for the timeline on the grant. It's very important that they don't overestimate or underestimate their time that it will take them for this grant. Some that I've seen in the past, and probably Vernal and Patty and everybody else who's done these has seen also, is that some of them really overestimate the time, so that when their year or two is up on the grant, they can say, well, I need more time, I need my grant extended. So make sure that it's something that can be done in the amount of time that they say. If they're working with animals, make sure that to check to see that they have the proper lab certification, because you don't want to see where they just grab rats off the street or alleyways or wherever. You want to make sure that they were the proper animals that were requested, whether they were a nude mouse or whatever. And if it was for a particular tumor, that was instilled in that rat that they're looking at. So make sure those are okay, and that the people who are working on the animals on the grant know what they're doing also. Make sure there's a beginning and supporting data to all the grants. So with that, we would like to thank the Advocacy Collaboration and Stacy at Coffee Mommy on Twitter. And we're happy to answer any questions, and you have our emails down at the bottom.
You guys are awesome. Thank you for doing this. I have a quick question first. And Vernal, if you don't mind going back a couple of slides where I think this is great. And oops, nope, other one forward, this one.
Mm-hmm.
When you started presenting this, I see this like list of 9 things as super helpful, not only in a grant review, but also sometimes you will be asked or maybe asked or maybe interested in participating as part of a grant.
Yes.
And I think that everything that you've articulated here is also very important before you decide whether or not you want to sign on and be part of a grant. And so I would just like to open it up to both of you, and actually to all of you who participated in grants.
Well, you know, a lot of times I know when I first got started and then people would ask me to be on a grant with them, they've already developed a grant. Well, that didn't work for me. That did not work for me because they've already, they just wanted my name on the grant so that they could get funding, and that didn't work for us. So now we're being asked, and I think Patty can testify to this, and so can Sandy, we're being asked as they're developing the protocol now. So we should be a part of developing the protocol and developing the grant, and all the way from the beginning, from an idea to submitting it. And I've done PCORI grants, and I was on it before they got started and took it all the way to publication. So I'm actually part of the publication of it, of the grant once it was finished. So we don't want to, you have to make sure that you're included at the very beginning and not brought in the middle after they've developed something, because I just don't think that it's not fair to us as advocates to just use our names and not be a part of what was
And
of
make
how it
sure
was.
that,
Yeah.
make sure that you're at the meetings, if they have monthly meetings on how their research is going, that you're in on at least a couple of those every 6 months so that you know what's happening with the
Mhm.
grant or with the proposal that they're writing, getting ready to write, and keep up with them. So I know the two that I'm on right now are both NIH grants, and so we meet a lot. That's by
Yeah.
this way,
I-
but
Yeah, my
you know.
Corey grant, we met once a month, and
Yeah.
it was really nice because I recognized that they were very serious about really getting the work done and through completion. It was a 3-year grant. So and I've been on some DoD grants, and we've met by phone call maybe every other month or so, and that's okay, because I recognize that these not just being scientists, they also teach classes, at the university. So they have work plus their labs and their training. So sometimes the meetings have to, they can't be as timely as I would like to have them. So.
And I'd like to add, like being on a grant, you get to see that side of it. Then when you review the grant, you know both sides of it. You know the patient side that you bring to the table, plus you know a little bit more about what their constraints are as well. So it makes you a better reviewer, I think. And I
Mhm.
think one of the things Sandy brought up is just key is, we had a whole discussion in a group because an advocate brought up, and it was just charming, but it was like, so what do you mean when you say this grant is over ambitious? Because that's one of the comments that comes up a lot, right, Sandy and
It
Vernal?
is.
Like, this
Mhm.
grant is
Yes.
over ambitious. So one of the advocates said, what do you mean? To me, that sounds good, but you're saying it like it's bad. What do you mean by that? So actually, we had a whole discussion. Then the next grant that came up, the PI, one of the reviewers said, this is overambitious, and looked at the reviewer and said, and what I mean by that is if they get 75% done, it's great. And that was a positive, even though when they say it, sometimes you think it's a negative. So it really clarified between us and them type of thing, regular language and science language, what that actually means. So really, just speaking up and saying, what do you mean by that really is key in those reviews.
And now when I see that, when someone says that, I look at what the institution is and who's doing the work. And if I see that it's, say, say Kim Larley's lab or Chuck Peru's lab, I'm not going to question that. It may be overly ambitious, and they're going to get it done. So.
And how much support, like if they say, I've got these other people I'm going to use, I'm like, good, because you're not going to do it by yourself. It's funny. It's cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's language. It's all about language. Yeah.
Well, and this is, Sandy brought it up, but this is also a networking opportunity for us as advocates. We are putting ourselves out there to be of assistance to these researchers out there. And so we as advocates need to take advantage of every opportunity where we can make a difference in the research arena. Because when we got involved in the cancer community, we wanted a seat at the table, and now we do. We have to be cognizant and do a good job at that. So when you say you're going to review for the DoD, don't do a half
You can
job.
say it.
Yeah, fast job, yeah.
Well, my husband's in the other room, so I'm not. I didn't want him to hear me say a bad word.
You were so cute.
So John had a question that he put in the chat,
Mhm.
and where there have been experiences when you felt like, uh-oh, now it just moved on me.
Just mind you, just
Felt like
'cause
you were
it's okay.
involved and felt you were there to check a box by those in power. Do you feel, all things being equal, that you cut and run, or are there ways to effectively ensure that your value is respected?
Mhm.
I think by knowing the science and being able to be confident and knowing what the grant is about, knowing what you're talking about, it's not just checking a box.
No.
It's you have input, your voice counts. Unless I misunderstood his question.
I think the
Yeah.
question is, there are times when I think it becomes apparent that we are kind of just checking a box. And John, feel free to speak up if
Yeah.
you want to clarify.
Yeah, it wasn't DoD specific, but more broadly, when in that situation, when there is that feeling, is it better for people who are busy, who have lots of things to accomplish, and if they feel that is a window dressing type of thing, saying, okay, we've got the patient, and there was an allusion to, again, signing on later on than should be. All
Yeah.
things equal, that there are choices to be made, and I know a lot of
Mhm.
advocates who walk away because the feeling is
Mhm.
they're never going to appreciate the patient input. They just want your name. Cool.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, that has happened. That's happened before, and it's happened to me, and I felt like I didn't make any difference. And so I said, I'm not going to do that anymore because my time is too valuable.
Yeah, and I make a judgment call actually. So, if I don't know the person and they contact me out of the blue, no, I don't sign on at the last minute. But if it's Donald McDonald or Kim Lyerly and saying, oh, I'm resubmitting this thing and I've worked with them for absolutely years, I'll say, sure, I'll just, send them a letter because I have this relationship with them, right? So you build these relationships and you know who they are, they know who you are. Like Gay Debbie, I've done for years, right? And she finally got funded, yay! but it takes several times sometimes to get funded, and so you
Mhm.
have to build these relationships. So when she calls and said, "Oh, I need your letter again. Can I just use your other one? And can you send me updates?" I'm like, "Sure," because I've already been there. I've already done that, and so I make these judgment calls as well. And I think we need to be flexible like that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm kind of like I like that too because I've built up relationships with
With
certain
Kim
researchers.
Lyerly.
Yeah, Kim Lyerly, Donald
He'll
McDonald.
get us to do anything. I know he goes to me and Vernal for everything.
So
So
Vernal and Sandy, there's a real strong opportunity here for you guys to name your price, because Manju said they'd like to borrow you to share this at a colorectal cancer meeting. Sandy, I did explain
You
in the
know my price.
Yeah. genetic cookies.
Yeah, you can do round up all the grant, patient advocates who do grant reviews and give them like lessons, tips, and charge them like $10 per tip.
I think it's really needed. I think
but
that
it's-
we used to do a training for Komen specific for the Komen grants, but I think the general like this is so needed across every cancer.
Mhm.
It
I actually do a
brings up the
training.
question, it brings up a question though, and I was joking about the well, not really about the cookies, but kind of. But
You have
newer
my address.
don't always realize that some of these grants should have monies in there to compensate them for their time.
Yeah.
And if you've been an advocate and if you're used to volunteering your time and if you're used to, so do you guys want to talk a little bit about that and kind of where those thresholds are between like a NIH grant versus a CBCRP grant versus a
Vernal, do you want to go first?
Well, actually, when I've gotten some funding, it has been out of the PI's own budget
Okay.
and not out of the grant itself. He may have decided that, I did a really good job, and so he wanted to fund me out of his own budget instead of, the grant itself. I have asked for funding out of the DoD budget, but I guess with DoD, they've said no to that. If I remember correctly, that you cannot have funding for the advocates in those budgets. So some of the PIs, if they give the advocates anything, it comes out of their own budgets, depending on how large the institution is. And they may give them an honorarium of some kind. I've got funding in other ways, like through PCORI, on my PCORI grant, when I was on the PCORI grant, and it was very much appreciated because we really worked hard on that grant, and so there was funding for us, and it was written into the grant, but not every. I'm not sure, but I've never reviewed for ASCO or NCI. But I have done some work at NCI and have been paid and gotten paid for it. I sat in an advisory committee.
Yeah, so I know that grants that I've been on as the patient advocate a long time ago. You have to understand, Vernal and I have been at this a long time, longer than we care to remember, I think.
27 years.
Yeah. It was, we were volunteers. I mean, and we weren't, we were just there.
Mm-hmm.
Ones that I'm on now, I tell them, you need to add something for the patient advocate. The last one that I was on, that I'm on, that the grant was approved, is I get my parking paid. I get an HEB gift card every quarter that she's still working on the grant, and of $50, which is good money. And if nobody, Vernal knows, Stacy knows, HEB is our big, huge grocery store here in Texas. And so getting a gift card to them is a good thing from them. And so other ones have been, food costs, we'll take you to dinner. But the last one I got, well, the ones I get from the IHPR department are actually funds. I get anywhere from $50 to $500, depending on my input and how much they're asking for.
And first of all, I just want to thank both of you, actually all of you who have been in this space so much longer than I have. So much volunteer work has gone into kind of paving the way for advocate voices. And I know that finally people are starting to recognize that it's not just a nice to have, it's actually beneficial to their research, in the quality of the research and the eventual dissemination of the research, to have that patient advocate perspective. And so I really do, if you haven't been part of a grant before, this is different than the review process. That's its whole other animal where, you can maybe get an honorarium and your travel is covered and things like that. But if you're written into a grant as a participant of the grant, your time is worth something. And so please know that and reach out to any of us to talk about what that, what that appropriate cost could be. Because while you may have an hourly rate, or you may, have, if it's a tiny little grant and they don't have a lot of extra money, then you can decide. You're like, $50 might be great. But if you're going to participate in a millions of dollars grant, yeah, they can carve out some monies for you to add value.
Yeah, and the other thing is I like to go to meetings. I like to go to ASCO or AACR. You can ask for funding to go to those meetings. And I've done that in the past. Maybe I didn't, and they funded my hotel and my travel to the meeting. And so that was appropriate for me, because, otherwise it would have, and I was retired by that time. So I felt like that was really good that he was able to fund my travel and my hotel for the meeting. So sometimes you can look at other creative ways that doesn't look like you're getting paid if they don't have the money to pay for it, and it can come out of their budget. And if it's a large university, they have, these PIs have a real nice budget that they work with every year. So I'm doing a little bit more of that to try and negotiate what I'll do for them.
This is Catherine. I was a program officer at the California Breast Cancer Research Program for a number of years. And that's how I met Vernal many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. She has done fabulous work with so many organizations. We actually went through a really lengthy process of getting input from people about what was an appropriate amount for the advocates, the stakeholders, to be paid for participating on grants. And CBCRP has a number of different kinds of grants, so it would vary. And we realized by the end that there was no way that we could come up with a specific answer for that. It had to be on a case-by-case basis. So even academics who do a lot of research, the funding has gone down so dramatically that now some of them do not have the slush funds that they used to. However, it still very explicitly says in the California Breast Cancer Research Program guidelines that I worked on that you need to acknowledge that this is expertise and perspective that the advocates are bringing, that this is an important thing. And I still will shout this from the rooftops, that deserves to be paid in some way. At the very least, like Sandi was saying, the travel, parking, providing people with food, and also to attend meetings. That's actually written in that advocates should be given a stipend or some funding to be able to attend meetings, in addition to whatever other funding they're given, stipend, honorarium, or hourly rate.
Because it's important. I just had this conversation the other day. So, and Komen stole from California Breast Cancer for their guidelines, actually, because you guys were the first to actually address this issue, I think. So thank you. But I think that I put things in buckets. Everything is in context. And I think there's not, like you say, one size fits all. If you volunteer with a company, you don't volunteer for a company, you ask for a payment. And I charge up the wazoo, right? So I'm doing some stuff for Pfizer. I definitely get paid. There's no question about it, right? That's just a given. When I do things for nonprofits, I don't give money, I give talent, right? So if I don't give the big bucks because I don't have the big bucks, but I'll give them time. And so my time and talent is what I give for them. And so I give that. I never expect anything from a nonprofit. And your universities kind of fall in that middle ground. And it depends on the universities, really. Some are not well funded. If you're at a public university that does things for the public and is a nonprofit, they don't have a lot of extra money. If you do stuff for a private, and like we had somebody from NC State, a student, go to Johns Hopkins for a summer rotation. And her comment coming back is they have money coming out of the walls up there because we had like no money and we're tight, tight, tight. And she goes up there and she's like, man, you could do anything. They had money everywhere. And so it depends. So not every institution is the same. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So those private institutions like we live in North Carolina, your Dukes have a lot more money than your UNCs have a lot less money. So just keep that in mind when you do things as well.
Well, that's why I go
So
to Duke when I want to go to a
that's
meeting.
when you want to go to a meeting, you go to Duke. That's what I do too. Because it's different. It's just
It is,
different.
and it's different, and I recognize that, you know. And Catherine, I'm so glad to see you on this call because I've been so enjoyed working with the California Breast Cancer Research Program over the years, and they're trying to train researchers there that are doing research because I've chaired their mock reviews. Their mock review panels for the last couple of years, last 2 or 3 years. And that is a really good process to teach researchers how to even write a grant. And so there's some of that going on, and California is kind of leading in that field because they're just funding California research, but they're teaching these researchers how to really write a good grant so that they can get funded. And so,
and they've also been teaching researchers about the importance of having advocates involved and not just having a checkbox.
Right.
You have to have legitimate relationship.
I think they were the first, weren't they? Because I was with Komen when they said, "Oh, we'll recommend it." And we were like, recommending it isn't good enough. You have to make it mandatory. Oh, but we can't do that for this grant. We'll only do that for this grant. And it took years, absolutely years to get it going. But I think we based everything off California.
What a lot of researchers have found is that if they involve the advocate early, then they have somebody to help them write that required lay abstract. And I got to tell you, like, have had researchers cry like, oh my God, I couldn't do this, because they think in the language of research. And most of us really sit in that middle ground of like talking with people where cancer is new. I need to put you guys on hold. My daughter's calling.
So also what Sandi said too about reading the scientific and lay abstract. They are so good at writing that scientific abstract. They are not really good at writing the lay abstract. Sometimes you need them both to actually make sense of what they're saying. Right. Just to say.
And you know what I do? I will read the scientific abstract first. And then I'll read the lay abstract. And I'm going, okay.
See how good they did.
And I'm getting so now that I don't even want to read the lay abstract.
I don't read that one first. I read the science one first.
I read the science one
first in the PDF for the young. I just did the ASCO, and so the scientific came before the lay. So
well, and I think there needs to be a nice glossary for people who are just getting started with this process. And Sandi said that, there's some glossaries out there. And I know we had a really good one for Project Lead, and I still use it. But now I know I can just Google everything now. So I look it up, and I go on PubMed, and I was looking at macrophages, and I said, what is a macrophage? And so this is a few years ago, and I looked it up. I said, oh, this is cool. So, it's really nice to go and see the cartoons and see actually what they're talking about. So it's easier now than it was when I first became a reviewer 25 years ago. We didn't have the internet to really help us in that process. So, but now we do. So.
But I always suggest when you Google, put cancer after it. So if you've got a term, put cancer after it. Otherwise, like when I was mentoring someone in reviewing, and she was trying to find out what IHC means. But if you don't put cancer after it, you get all sorts of things. And she's like, I know this is not what it is, but I just have to ask you. So I said, put cancer after it.
Well, thank you guys. I just want to do a time check. We've got a few more minutes till the top of the hour. Does anybody have any other questions for Vernal and for Sandi?
One of the things I want to bring up that I forgot to put in there was when you're reading the grant, make sure there are no misspellings and that it's written in good English that you can understand. Because doing some of the California grants, it was like, huh?
Yeah.
A lot of
and when you-
misspellings, a lot of, yeah.
The
Someone
other thing,
did not edit.
yeah, the other thing to
As
look
an
for.
advocate, I've actually worked with non-native English speakers and totally rewritten their proposals because I'm an editor at heart and I just couldn't take it. Not just the misspellings, but the grammar and just completely indecipherable.
Right.
You know, the other thing to look for is also people who, it may be a prostate cancer researcher, and now he wants to get into breast cancer. So he's taking previous research and then he's cutting and pasting, and that does not work for me. And they inevitably make a mistake because there's one word in there that has prostate or something else, and it has nothing to do with breast cancer, but they want to get funding. So you have some of that going on. So that's why it's really important to really carefully read everything in the grant, because sometimes they're cutting and pasting from other grants to get funding, and that's really not their field of study, but they're trying to get some funding.
I had a
What's
quick
the-
question. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I haven't done DOD yet. What's the rejection rate when you apply for these? Is it hard to get accepted, or how does that run?
You're talking about rejection rate as an advocate or rejection rate of the grant applications?
I don't know what I'm talking about. Yes, both. When you apply to be a reviewer for say ASCO or DOD, do they want people who've previously done it, or are they looking to bring in new people, or
They're looking to bring in new people,
DOD wants new.
every time. And it depends on how many grants they get in, because I know that sometimes they were expecting a certain amount of grants, and then all of a sudden, once they were triaged, they only had so many. So then all of the people that they invited, they had to uninvite maybe a few reviewers. So that sometimes takes place. So it's about getting some new reviewers in and then bringing in some of the older reviewers to mentor the new reviewers. So I think they still do that. I haven't reviewed in quite a few years since I just do programmatic review. But that's the way it's been
Still does that.
the last several years that I know of.
So
I think as a
because
new
we're
reviewer,
recording
you would
this,
have a better chance of getting into DOD than an older reviewer. So
because
please
we're
apply.
recording this, I want to see if I know that people have questions on how do they get involved. And I know the DoD has a website where you can go and you can apply, but some of the other places where you can either one, apply to be a grant reviewer, or two, how do you get connected to a researcher that is looking to apply for a grant so that you can be part of that grant? So how do people break in this space?
That's another PowerPoint.
Yes.
I think that's a conundrum right now, is matching
Uh-huh.
people. And so when I tell people that they're looking for things, I actually tell them, oh, I can go to the Advocate Collaborative now. And go to all different- like how wide do you want me to go? Because virtual is good now, right? So you don't have to be in the same spot. So can I go to here? Can I go to there? I've got my list of people, and I've got my local people. I've got my list of regular people. You got the pair listserv, which everybody should get on. I think if you're not on the pair listserv, you have to get on it. I post everything from the
Wait, what
Alliance,
is this? I don't know what this
the
is.
Patient Advocates and Research listserv.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can you
every
put that in the
Wilson,
chat?
Stacy. Yeah, I'll email Stacy. And
send it to the
because when I have an Alliance opening, I post it on Pair, as well as I go to the like if it's lung, I go to the lung cancer nonprofit. But
And to
ask
confirm,
Grace,
PAIR is for all cancers.
Yes.
all cancers.
All
and it's a
cancers.
lot of people. Yeah.
It's
Been around. It's been around since the 90s. Yeah, it's been around since the 90s.
90s,
It's the
yes.
old fashioned. It's not Twitter. It's an email listserv, which is so old fashioned, right? I know.
I'm not judging.
And Deb Collier started it. So Deb
Yes.
Collier is the one that you can
Ah, okay.
contact. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm going to say that I got involved. I got connected with a researcher because I'm a graduate student at Rutgers. So I'm actually I'm part of a weekly lab meeting. So I first got connected with this researcher because it was a token. You know, it was like the grant was due and he needed the thing. And then I got mad at him and I called him out on it. Like, I truly did, because he listed me. He wanted me to be the lead advocate. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, I just wanted in the door with him because he's at the School of Public Health. And then he called me out as a metastatic patient. And I was like, I didn't give you permission for this. You know, you're allowed, like the other advocates, their diagnosis is not stage specific. And so we had this whole conversation about how I said, I get it. Having a metastatic patient gives you clout. And I'm not playing that game, you know? Like,
Yeah.
but so anyway, so now we're good. Like, I could tell him anything, but so I'm actually part of the lab, and it's because I'm a student. I'm a public policy student focusing on health policy, but I'm so that's my role as sort of the advocacy and policy liaison. So when I get to co-author papers, I bring the policy perspective and I bring the advocate perspective, but I'm in then with his graduate public health students who are working on their PhDs. I'm putting in input into that as well. So it's not only when he's applying for grants and we as a lab are sort of, it's a multidisciplinary lab. So it's his public health students, we have oncologists, we have economists, we have me as the policy person, which I keep trying to I keep introducing them to policy professors, and it hasn't, like,
they get 2 in 1 with you, Jen.
They seem to be okay with me. But so it's really interesting because he sort of said to me, you know, I sort of joke and I'm like, please, you know, I have to leave these meetings early now because I have a class like that starts, and I'll say, please, you know, front load the meeting so the things you need my input. And he's like, but we want your input on everything. I'm like, okay, but you know, can we play some games here? You know, but it just, so it's nice to be all layers of involved.
If you don't have, and again, I know you guys know this, but I also know that there's some people who are going to watch this recording. I mean, if you don't have the time, and if you can't insert yourself that closely into,
I was really lucky. I have to say, I was really lucky.
You can still reach out. Every academic medical center that I know of usually has some sort of programming and in the research department around cancer. And so UCSF, for instance, has a breast oncology program, and they have advocates and they have researchers and they have opportunities for them to go together. So if you have access to an academic medical center, you may want to try there. The other inroad to meet researchers, sometimes you, even through patient advisory councils at your health institution, and you'll have, you know, you'll start to make the connections, as I think, you know, Vernal and Sandi said, a lot of this is a networking opportunity. You make the connections at those facilities and then say, hey, I'd like to work on this research project. So
yeah, so like Jen, I'm at an academic institution, and so I go to Chuck Peru's lab meetings. So he's the genomics guy, but there's lots of other people in there, oncologists. That's where I met Phil and Stephanie and everybody else. But then he put me on rotation. So every 4 months or so. So I've spoken in their lab meeting like 5 or 6 times. So me and Lisa Carey share a slot. So if she can't do it, I do it, and we go vice versa. And of course, she can't do it most times. So, but I can talk about anything I want. So I talk about advocacy. I talk about lay abstracts. Then the students would come up to me later and say, oh, I tried what you said. It works much better. You know, like, so try to get on their rotation. Yeah.
We're all like, it's so, because he had 25 years at University of Rochester, and now he's at Rutgers. So I got in on his lab at the ground floor. So it was sort of a nothing. We just met every week, and now all of a sudden it's a lab.
Yeah.
So there's not we're still loosey-goosey structure-wise, but yeah.
See, Chuck has at least 25 in attendance and like 40 invited. So Yeah, it's
if
a
I can
big
say
lab.
something,
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt that like being on Twitter makes a big difference. So if you write something that you're interested in doing, you know, you're interested in research projects and all, then people can reach out. So I
Yep.
think that might be another way.
Yeah.
I
if
was
you're-
on a call the other day and the person said, patients aren't on Twitter. And I just laughed. I said, no, they are.
Uh,
Thank
What
you,
we're trying
all
to
of
do is to
you.
get oncologists
Okay,
on
thanks a lot,
Twitter. That's what
Stacy.
we're trying to do.
All
Oh,
right.
one-
thank
one-
you guys.
wait,
Have a
one more thing.
wonderful-
One more thing.
Yeah,
One more
yeah, yeah.
thing.